DH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and these are 5 cards that I think should see a little bit more play in the Commander format, and I am going to be starting out this time with a background haunted one. And backgrounds, of course, can end up in the command zone, but I think a lot of them are really fantastic in the 99, and this is one for sure that could fit in the 99 of a lot more decks. 2 and a black legendary enchantment background. Commander creatures you own have, whenever this creature becomes tapped, it and other creatures you control that share a creature type with it each get +2/+0 and gain Undying until end of turn. So this is one of those cards that you look at and you go, okay, it's talking about creature types, so I want to put it in a deck where I have the same creature types in my deck so that I can take more advantage of it. But I think this is a good enough card to put in a deck just to protect your commander. Just forget about the creature types in general. This is just, I can give my commander Undying until end of turn, which can be really good, right? Of course, that creature has to be tapped, but that's not particularly difficult to do. If we look at just the new commander Hidetsugo and Kari, there is a commander that you actually want to be dying, right? Of course, it has flying, so I can swing with it. It is now tapped. It's going to gain this ability. It also gets the +2/+0, so it's going to be getting in for a considerable amount of damage. And then, obviously, I'm going to have sack outlets in that deck. I can sacrifice my commander after combat. It gets the Undying. I get the Dies trigger, and you can even stack it in a way that I'm going to get the Undying and the Dies trigger at the same time. So I have the Undying trigger resolve first, have my commander come back into play before the last ability resolves. And of course, if I don't have something on top of my library that I want to cast for free, I can now do that because my commander has ETB'd, and I get to use that first ability, that Brainstorm ability, before the last ability resolves. So might be a great inclusion there. Any commander that is tapping at instant speed, I think this is a pretty good include. If you have a commander with a tap ability that can tap at instant speed, this can just be responding to a board wipe. My opponent casts a board wipe. In response, I tap my commander to use its ability. It now has Undying, and if I happen to have any other creatures in play that share a creature type with it, they'll get the Undying as well, but just my commander alone comes back into play and survives that board wipe. I think it's a pretty good include in a lot of decks. All right, next up we have Chakram Retriever, 4 in a red, elemental dog, 2/4. Partner with Chakram Slinger, which of course you can throw the Chakram Slinger in there as well if you're fitting the colors. But again, we're just going to ignore that part because the last ability is what we really care about. Whenever you cast a spell during your turn, untap target creature. That's pretty fantastic. And again, in that tapping theme where I have a commander that I want to be tapping, this can be a fantastic include. I think a lot of people might shy away from this card because I might not be fitting the colors of the Chakram Slinger, but if we completely ignore that, I just have a commander that I want to be untapping and reusing that ability again, this is a fantastic include. And again, we got a couple of great commanders that just came out in March of the Machine where this can be a fantastic fit, where I want to untap my commander so I can use its ability again. Casting a spell during your turn is obviously not that difficult. So I think there's a lot of commanders out there that have tapping abilities that you want to be untapping and using again, and this is a pretty great option if your deck is blue. Continuing on at number 3 with sort of the untapping theme. I didn't really do this on purpose, but it is kind of funny how it worked out this way. Sparring Regimen, 2 and a white enchantment. When Sparring Regimen enters the battlefield, learn. And of course, the learn ability was a little overshadowed when it came out in Strixhaven. And the reason why is because it says you may reveal a lesson card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand. And of course, in Commander, you can't do that, right? You can't take cards from outside of the game and put them in your hand. So the whole lesson learn thing doesn't work in the Commander format. However, it also lets you discard a card and draw a card, right? Any learn card in the Commander format can actually be usable because if you don't do the lesson thing, you can still loot. And of course, that's always handy in any deck. When it enters the battlefield, I get to loot. That's not bad. However, I really like this last ability. Whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature and untap it. And again, fits with any commander that you want to be untapping a lot. Of course, you have to attack with it, which can be sometimes an issue, sometimes not. You're also putting +1/+1 counters on it. There's a lot of commanders that you want to be attacking with, but maybe using their tap ability as well. Obviously, putting the +1/+1 counter on your creature is also going to work. Any tapping or untapping theme in general, I think this is a fantastic fit. If you just have a big scary commander that you want to be attacking with, but also want to leave it up as a blocker, this is also fantastic. I'm just going to swing with my commander, which is what I want to be doing, but then I get to put a counter on it and untap it and leave it up as a fantastic blocker as well. I think this is a pretty underrated card. Again, the learn doesn't really work, except it does allow you to loot. And then the attacking thing as well, maybe there might even be some commanders where both of those abilities fit with what your deck is doing. So I think this card for sure could see play in a lot more decks. Coming in at number 2 is Gift of Doom. 4 and a black enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature has death touch and indestructible, and morph, sacrifice another creature. So this is a very unique, interesting card. I had recently included this in my own Kinzu deck, where I thought it was a fantastic fit, of course, because I want to be sacrificing creatures in that deck, which this does. And I also really don't want my commander to be dying. I want it to stay on the battlefield so I can be using it. And of course, giving it indestructible is fantastic. The death touch part fits extra good with a lot of commanders as well. There's a lot of Rakdos commanders that you probably want to be in a sacrifice theme. Giving your commander indestructible is great. The death touch can be a nice added bonus as well. But the reason I really like this card is because it is a kind of a nice gotcha moment and a great way to protect your commander that in black you might have a little bit of trouble doing. So you're going to play this as a morph creature, right? You're going to pay the 3 and put it face down. Now, the morph cost is just sacrificing a creature. It doesn't require any mana at all. So if you have a commander that you're worried about dying because it's going to be a target, I can play my Gift of Doom face down as a morph creature. Of course, my opponents don't know what it is. And then maybe the next turn I cast my commander, and in response to any removal that my opponents might be casting, assuming indestructible is going to save it, I can in instant speed sacrifice another creature. This will flip over and I can attach it to my commander and make it indestructible. In response to a board wipe, particularly good because of course your team's going to get blown up anyway. So just sacrifice one of those other creatures that are going to die to the board wipe anyway and save one of my creatures, probably my commander, so that it sticks around. I think this is a really underrated way to protect your creatures in the commander format, and in particular fits pretty fantastically in any of those aristocrats type of decks. All right, and lastly today I'm going to talk about Reaver Titan, and I've mentioned this a little bit on my channel, and this is one of those cards that when I first saw it I thought it was really good. I shoehorned it into a couple of decks, tried it out. It is even better than I thought. For me, this is a really great colorless win con that can fit in almost any deck. If you have a deck that is having trouble maybe closing out games, this I think is a fantastic universal win con that fits in a ton of decks. This card is incredible and I think it is super underrated in the format. So it is a 7 mana vehicle, okay? It's a 10/10 and has crew 4. So it is, I guess, probably extra good in a deck where you have a commander that has a 4 power that you can easily crew this with. And if you have a commander that you don't want to be attacking with or tapping to use its ability, it's extra good, right? Any of those commanders that just sit there, you're just using their static abilities maybe, now you can tap it to crew your Reaver Titan. And of course, a 10/10 is pretty menacing, but what makes this particularly good are the other 2 abilities. Void Shields, which gives it protection from mana value 3 or less. Now, that is really, really incredible for a number of reasons. First of all, you can't be blocked by any creature with mana value 3 or less, which means your opponent just can't chump with little creatures. They can only block it with a creature that has mana value 4 or greater, which makes this really hard to block. And also, it's going to make your opponents block it with a really big creature likely. So they're probably going to lose that creature because you're not going to want to attack a player that has a creature with a bigger than 10 power, obviously, right? So almost assuredly, your opponents are going to have a hard time blocking this, but more importantly, they're just going to have a hard time removing it in general. Almost every single removal spell, instant speed removal spell in the format is going to be mana value 3 or less. Certainly all the most popular ones in the format are going to be mana value 3 or less. When you crew this, a Swords to Plowshares will not be able to touch it. When it's not crewed, a Beast Within or a Generous Gift or an Anguished Unmaking or a Chaos Warp, none of those, some of those popular removal spells in the entire format cannot touch your Reaver Titan. And as an added bonus, board wipes can't touch your Reaver Titan, right? That is the nice added bonus about vehicles, is they are crewed on your turn. So of course they're going to be creatures on your turn, but on your opponent's turn, they're going to turn back into vehicles. They're not going to be creatures anymore. So almost every single board wipe is not going to touch your Reaver Titan as well. So it is really, really difficult to get this guy off the table once you've gotten it there. And again, we're not even finished with all the things it's doing here. Whenever Reaver Titan attacks, it deals 5 damage to each opponent as well. So a really fantastic way to close out a game. I'm going to attack a certain player with this. All my opponents are going to take 5 damage, and then that player is going to take an additional 10 when it connects. So one player is going to be taking 15 damage here, and the other opponents are going to be taking 5. That's going to close out the game pretty quick. I think this is a really, really fantastic colorless sort of win con that can fit in a whole lot of decks where maybe you are having trouble closing out games. Give it a try in one of your decks. And if you are thinking of purchasing this card or any other cards that I have talked about today, I do have a TCG Player link. It is in the description below. Give it a click. It does help support the channel, but that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.